Hi, my name is Nikki Burnett and welcome to the Green Gazette. Today we'll be talking about the implications of the removal and introduction of apex predators. And if you didn't see my last video that explains what an apex predator is, they are predators at the top of the food chain with no predators of their own, and they influence the structure and behaviours of organisms within an ecosystem. So we're going to have a look at the reintroduction of the grey wolf into Yellowstone National Park. Since the 1800s, wolves have been hunted out of Yellowstone and were completely eradicated in the early 1900s. And in the 1970s, the US introduced the Endangered Species Act, where people began to recognise the moral and legal obligation to prevent human-caused extinction of other animals. And this led scientists to developing the idea of reintroducing the grey wolf back into Yellowstone. As the land was largely intact and had an abundance of elk, which the grey wolf need to survive. So the reintroduction of the grey wolf happened in 1995, where 14 wolves were released into Yellowstone and their movements and behaviours were tracked by scientists.
In the absence of the wolves, the elk had free rein of the park, with an abundance of choice for food sources, and nothing was excluded. After the wolf reintroduction, the elk's behaviour changed. They were less likely to graze in open areas and stuck to areas that provided some form of shelter or escape from a potential attack. Since this change in grazing habits, the average height of the aspen tree has increased from 40 centimetres to 230 centimetres.
Essentially, the plants were able to grow taller, bigger and stronger and provide more habitat to other organisms. Because of the change of behaviours in the elk and the trees are now able to grow, other species are now able to move back in. So now we're going to talk about beavers. So pre-removal of the grey wolf, beavers lived in Yellowstone and created their dams, which provided pools of water for animals to drink. And these pools of water had good vegetation around it, which provided a place for animals to live and eat. And this is also where the beavers got their main source of food and the wood for their dams. Once the wolves were eradicated, the elk began eating the trees around these ponds, leaving nothing for the beavers, and they either left or died. With no beavers around to maintain the dams, they eventually broke and caused the water to flow differently than it once had. The areas surrounding the rivers got flooded and muddy and not much could grow or live there.
But once the wolves came back, the elk stopped grazing in these areas, which allowed the vegetation to grow back, and eventually the beavers moved back in, rebuilding their dams, which changed the flow of the rivers and provided once again the pools of water and the vegetation around the rivers to be able to regrow.
So this project is the beginning of the whole idea of rewilding.
Taking an apex predator and putting them back into their historical habitats to regain the natural balance of the ecosystem. And this is based on the theory that the apex predator is a keystone species, which has a large impact on its environments considering their relatively small population numbers. And this triggers what is called a trophic cascade, which is what we saw with the reintroduction of the grey wolf back into Yellowstone. So, in summary, the loss of the grey wolf allowed the elk populations to increase, which in turn decreased the abundance and availability of woody trees, and this affected the smaller herbivores that co-inhabited the area. And by simply reintroducing the wolf, we saw the balance return to Yellowstone. Alright, well, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and hopefully you learnt something. In the description box below, you will find a link to my blog post, which will have all of the resources I used to create this video if you want to know more. And thanks again, I'll see you in the next one.